Well, we have 1 week to go, and there are still 5 playoff spots available. But how did we get here? I think it's time we take a look back to Week 17. But before we start diving into these games, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Week 17. Who do you think is going to make the Super Bowl? Who do you think will win it all? I want to hear what you guys have to say, and I'll respond to all the into. Do leave a comment. So we're going to start things off here with Thursday Night Football, where the Cleveland Browns absolutely pants the living hell out of the New York Jets. Final score 37-20. The game was a lot closer at the end than it really should have been. And my big problem with the Browns in this one, my big gripe with them, is that they had multiple chances to put the Jets away, and they failed to do so. They struggled to, drive downfield in the second half and get a touchdown and win it. They struggled to really hold the Jets at different times from them getting a touchdown or anything to keep in this game. So that might be something that comes back to bite Cleveland in the playoffs if they can't put away teams. But overall, a solid win for them. For the Jets, you're done. You've been done, but you played with no heart in that game. You played for pity at the end, and that was it. All right, moving on to the Saturday night thriller, the Dallas Cowboys beating the Detroit Lions 20-19. Now, before we get any further, I do want to make my opinion known on that whole controversial ending there. I personally feel that unless there was obvious and definitive proof that the lineman, number 68, went and told the ref and made sure the ref acknowledged that he was eligible, then that would fall on the player. Now, if the ref made the mistake, that does fall on him. If he, thought 70, said he was eligible and it was meant to be 68, but it does fall. The burden does fall on the player to make sure that the ref knows that they are eligible. But anyway, Detroit taking a tough loss, but once again, the turnovers coming back to bite them. That always happens. Whenever the Lions lose, it's always because of the turnovers. They don't lose because they suck. They lose because they turn the ball over. And Dallas was able to capitalize on that. It was an ugly game for them, but they still got another win at home. This team is going to be tough to play at home if they host a playoff game at all, really. All right, let's get this one over quick here. The Miami Dolphins absolutely getting blown out by the Ravens, 56-19. Yeah, Miami can't beat a good team on the road. That's all but settled at this point. So unless they win their division, it's going to be a tough road for them to make the playoffs. Meanwhile, Baltimore, once again proving why they are the best team in the league right now. All right, moving on to the New England Patriots taking on the Buffalo Bills, where the Patriots fell by a final score of 27-21. And the Patriots, they had a spark. They had life at the beginning of this game. First play of the game, period. On the kickoff, New England returns it for a 92-yard return for a touchdown. What did they do after that? Nothing until Buffalo kind of got ahead. Now, Buffalo, I do have a problem with them. They had multiple opportunities, just like the Browns. They had multiple opportunities to put the Patriots away, and they didn't. And they let the Patriots linger. You let a good team linger in the playoffs, you're going to lose. So unless you can stop letting good teams linger, or letting even any team linger, you're going to have a tough time. All right, moving on to the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Chicago Bears, and the Bears end up winning this one. Final score was 37-17. And the Bears were fighting for their playoff lives. This team is looking good. They are looking hot. They are looking amazing at this point. Now, they are out of the playoffs, but I would say this team, stick with Justin Fields. Get him Marvin Harrison Jr. first overall, and you'll be sitting pretty. Trust me, because Chicago has a guy in Fields. He has been balling out these last few weeks. Ever since he returned, he's been balling out, and this team just looks completely different now with him under center. Meanwhile, Atlanta, losing a tough game, now they're going to need a little bit of a miracle on Week 18. They need to win and have the Panthers win in order to win the division. Now, anyway, even if the Panthers lose, Tampa Bay gets the division. So, basically, this will be the first playoff game. It'll be fun to watch the Falcons versus the Saints next week, but both teams will be fighting for their lives. All right, moving on to the Tennessee Titans getting absolutely annihilated by the Houston Texans. Final score was 26-3. Texans win. And, man, this team looks amazing with C.J. Stroud, don't they? Stroud's first game back, and he balls out for this team. He leads them to a massive victory, and this will massively help their playoff chances. Basically, no matter what happens, their game is going to be basically a playoff game, so to speak. The winner of the Texans-Colts next week will be in. The loser will go home. That is going to be a fun game to watch. Unfortunately, we will not be live for it, but it will be a fun one to watch nonetheless. All right, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Indianapolis Colts, where the Colts end up winning 23-20. Vegas was trying to save their playoff lives. Little did they know it would have been squashed because Kansas City was going to win later in the day, but that's no, neither here nor there. Basically, Vegas fighting hard, but Indy was always one step ahead. They always had, it was always a 2-possession lead. So whenever Vegas scored, they'd be able to go right down and score and make it a 2-possession game once again. So there was just not much Vegas could have done because, once again, they have been thriving off of their defense getting the turnovers. We said this last week. This team does well when the defense can generate the turnovers. If the defense can't get those turnovers, they lose the game. And that's kind of what happened there. The defense didn't generate turnovers. The Colts played a very clean game, playing a really solid game, holding on to their playoff hopes too. Once again, their game against Houston next week will be basically a playoff game. Looking forward to that one. But anyway, good game on both sides. Indy just was one step ahead. All right, let's go ahead and not spend much time on this one. It's the Carolina Panthers falling to the Jacksonville Jaguars 26-0. Carolina had no answers. They just died on live TV. That's about all I can say about them. Jacksonville, on the other hand, they managed to show that they can keep fighting. This team was in desperate need of a win. Now, it wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. That offense should have had a day. They should have been able to ball out. And that offense should have been able to easily, they had multiple opportunities to put up a touchdown. They came away with, I think, no touchdowns in the first quarter and a half, at least. It was an ugly, ugly game for Jacksonville, but they did get the win. They got things going in the second half. Defense was able to generate some turnovers and win the game for them. All right, moving on to a heart attack on a turf. We have the New York Giants hosting the Rams, where the Rams end up winning 26-25. And man, the first quarter of this game, total injury bowl. You got to think like 3 big injuries in the first quarter alone. Not to mention the fact that later on in the game, the Rams did end up getting a lead, a decently substantial lead. But once again, the Rams' weakness and their Achilles heel comes back. They let teams hang around. They can't finish them off. That happened once again this week. Now, they managed to get the win. It was ugly. They really shouldn't have had the win. If kickers could have made their kicks, the Rams would have lost by 1 point. But the Rams end up managing to pull out this win. Somehow, Giants having having 1 missed PAT and a missed field goal attempt. The Rams having 2 missed PATs and a final score that was 26-25. If all kicks are made, Rams lose by 1, and we're talking a whole different story here as the Rams would be screwed and maybe not make the playoffs. But now, Rams are in, good job, and Giants, go home. You're done. All right, moving on to the upset of the week, the Arizona Cardinals beating the Philadelphia Eagles by a final score of 35-31. This one sending San Francisco as the 1 seed in the NFC officially, and man, Philadelphia dominated the first half, and once again, second half comes around, they disappear. The Eagles' offense, nowhere to be found. The defense, good luck finding them. That allowed Arizona to come back in it, and Arizona has been a constant fighter of a team this year. But because of this win by Arizona, yeah, they get the win, but now, no matter what, Chicago has the number 1 overall pick locked up through Carolina as the next worst team to Carolina is a 3-way tie with 4 wins. Carolina only has 2. So good job, Arizona. You won the battle, but you lost the war. All right, moving on to a game that on paper looks close, but it was not close. The New Orleans Saints beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-13. And yeah, New Orleans just had their way with Tampa Bay. Every time they turned around, New Orleans just kept making things happen. They kept gaining and gaining and gaining. They had, I think, a 20-0 lead going into the fourth quarter. That's how bad it was for this Bucs team. So the Saints end up getting a big critical win, allowing them to stay in the race for the division next week, assuming that Carolina wins and, they end up winning. But either way, the Buccaneers, what was that? You're trying to win the division and you're going to play like that? That's not very good, buddy. Get your stuff together and maybe get a win next week so you can maybe look decent going into the playoffs. All right, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, absolutely annihilating the Washington Commanders 27-10. And man, this game was close in the first half, wasn't it? But then the second half came around and San Fran said, hey, we want this 1 seed. We want to make sure that if Arizona wins, we get the 1 seed. So they end up turning on the Jets and they never turn back. Meanwhile, Washington, they just completely collapsed on the field and were non-existent after halftime. They kind of said, hey, we made it to halftime, now let's go home and celebrate New Year's. All right, moving on to a big one here. The Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Seattle Seahawks by a final score of 30-23, sending the Rams into the playoffs officially Man, this is a fun game. The Steelers, once again, just one step ahead of Seattle, and this offense looks good under Mason Rudolph. Rudolph is allowing the Steelers to have that deep threat that the defense has to respect so that the run game can get going. This team has been averaging about 425 to 430 yards per game under Rudolph. They had 468 yesterday or something like that. I mean, this is insane for this team. Rudolph is going off himself, and the team is playing well around him. Even if Pickett's healthy, I say right now you ride the hot hand, and then if he falls off, you put Pickett in. But ride the hot hand, Pittsburgh. That's your chance to go into the playoffs and doing some damage. Meanwhile, Seattle, that's a tough loss for you, and now you are going to have a tough road to the playoffs next week. You can't just win and in. You need help. So, hope for help, and maybe we'll see you in the playoffs, Seattle. All right, moving on to the least consequential game of the week. The Chargers falling to the Broncos 16-9, and this is really a nothing burger. Denver was done. They were eliminated because of all the other games in that slate. And, yeah, Denver manages to get a win without Wilson. Chargers end up losing, which is a win for them, so they get a better draft pick. And, yeah, let's just go ahead and move on. Moving on to the game, a big game this week. The Cincinnati Bengals playing the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs end up winning this one by 8. Final score 25-17. In this game, I was catching up with it a little bit here and there. It was a back and forth game. It looked like all of a sudden it's Cincy, now it's KC, now it's Cincy, now it's KC. I mean, it was a good game, but Kansas City was able to control that game at the end and get a big win in their playoff hopes. So Kansas City manages to clinch with their win this week. They clinch the AFC West, they clinch a playoff spot, and Cincinnati, good riddance to you. See you next year. You're done. All right, and last but not least, let's go ahead and get this one over with quick here. The Green Bay Packers dominating the Minnesota Vikings 33-10, and yeah, this wasn't even close. Green Bay annihilated. They get a big win to help their playoff hopes, and the Vikings really don't have a quarterback to lead them. So, good luck, Minnesota. You got Detroit next week in a must-win game, and you better hope that Chicago loses if you win, because otherwise, you're screwed. Well, that's about going to do it for me today. If you guys did like, don't forget to smash like and subscribe. It does help me out a whole lot. I will also be having postmortems for the Bengals, the Raiders, and the Bears coming out this week. My Broncos video essay that went up just yesterday will be treated as the postmortem for the Broncos as well, because I do a good job kind of breaking down that team season as well. And I guess with that, if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and check out this video down here. It's one that YouTube thinks you will like. And with that, I will see you guys later. Peace out and have a good one.